We're going to do a slightly different video today, and we're going to sit down and talk about my top 5 craft market tips. Some of these are maybe a little bit delusional, maybe a little bit unhinged, and I'm not going to be talking about things that you see in a lot of videos, such as having clear price signs, having branding, that sort of thing. We won't be touching on that today, but these are some ones that I've not really seen many people speak about. And just before I start, I've probably done about 60 different events, maybe some 1-day events, some 3-day events over the last few years. So I have done quite a few, so I feel like I have built up kind of my own knack for picking events or running events and that sort of thing. I run a dog accessories business where I make and sell handmade dog collars, leads, bandanas, toys, and then I also sell natural treats as well, just to give you the full picture of what we've got going on. But anyway, let's get into the tips. So the first tip is to stop going to the same events year after year if you do not sell a repeat purchase item. If you sell something that someone is likely going to buy once and it's going to last some years, or they're not going to need to buy another one, then going back to these same events every year, you're likely not going to get the same amount of income that you did when you first traded there. I learned this the hard way, where I went to a few events one year and I did really well at them. I had some of the best sales of that year, and then I thought, fab, I'll go back next time. And obviously all the locals that were going to that event were then going back the following year, and they had already bought from me if they were going to buy from me. If they didn't want to buy from me and they didn't have dogs, then obviously they weren't going to buy. This might vary depending on where you live. I live in quite a rural area, so if there is local town events and local city events, it's usually just the locals that are going. You wouldn't really see tourists or visitors to these areas going to these events. If you're based in more of a touristy area, then maybe it might work, but just from my experience, usually it's the same people going every year. People who maybe missed the year that you were trading there, or new people to the area, going to these events doesn't really tend to claw back that same amount of income that you would have made previously. If you are going to go to the same events every single year, maybe consider selling more repeat purchase items. For example, I've expanded into dog treats, or go to those events every few years and kind of spread it out a little bit more. I'm going to sound like I'm telling you not to go to any events, but I promise that is not the case. But my second tip is to stop going to craft market events just because you're handmade. The issue I have with standalone craft markets is a lot of people go there for a bit of a day out, a bit of a window shop, just to say, oh, that's nice, maybe get some lunch and a coffee. But what you really want to be doing is finding common ground with your customer and exploring other avenues that they might be interested in, rather than just going to craft markets. For example, a lot of people have dogs. Therefore, I go to a lot of different shows that are absolutely nothing to do with dogs. I go to car shows, I go to tattoo conventions, I go to music and art festivals. You wouldn't necessarily think that they are in any way related. However, the people that go to these shows tend to have a dog, and they tend to be my best events. And I don't think I've ever seen a business selling similar or the same items as mine, or even another dog treat seller at these events. And it can work for the majority of businesses who are selling handmade products to people. For example, if you sell candles, if you sell art, pottery, things that decorate your house, people will have other interests and still like your business. So therefore, start expanding past this idea that because you're handmade, you have to go to craft markets, when that's just not the case. Think about other hobbies that you like and other things that you're interested in, and go to events catered towards them, because I guarantee that you are not the only person that likes cars but also likes candles. Do you get where we're going with this? And going to these events have massively changed and supported my business through really difficult financial times. So just really think about what else you enjoy in life, what else do your customers enjoy in life? Do they enjoy camping? Do they enjoy going to live music events? That sort of thing. Go crazy, test and experiment at different events, because I would say 9 times out of 10, they have way outperformed any craft market that I've been to. My third tip is to find something else that is going to be your unique selling point, because nowadays being handmade just isn't enough of a selling point anymore. We're in a cost of living crisis, and the average household is having to watch how they spend their money more. And when you've got the rise of platforms like Shein and Temu, where you can get items that are very same, I know worse quality, I know, but a lot cheaper, people are now starting to try and think about the financial side of things rather than whether it's handmade or not. Let's take wax melts, for example. You can buy plenty of really cheap online wax melts. that more or less do the job. Maybe you would expect their fragrance to be a little bit lower and not to be as noticeable. This is something that I definitely struggle with as well, because you have to find other things to sell yourself on. So for example, it might be that for your wax melts, your fragrances are crazy different. What's her name on Instagram? I follow her and I absolutely love her content. She does like candles, but they're all alternative emo, like horror story vibes. Like, it's something so different, and that, like, an example of that would draw someone away from buying your typical candle off of an online platform and would persuade someone to buy a handmade product because of how different it is. I think the other route that people try and go down is by doing more founder content and building more of a relationship with your audience. This is something that I am trying to slowly do, so I don't have a lot of expertise in that area, but a lot of people have done it really well. They've kind of built a relationship with their audience online that has meant that they've been getting regular sales off them, as opposed to their audience picking somewhere cheaper. I would say kind of the third option that you would do is, if you are going to sell yourself on being handmade, you need to make sure that your quality of your products completely justifies paying that extra price compared to something that off Temu or Shein or another mass-produced website that will just kind of do the job. You need to make sure that you are firm in this premium handmade item that will draw in those customers who have that extra bit of cash to splash. I don't think anybody is asking you to have this insane product that's never ever been seen before, but just something a little bit different. It could be as simple as colour schemes. It could be you're doing a brighter version than what is online, that sort of thing. Just something that is a little bit different to draw people away from these mass-produced, cheaper platforms. My fourth tip is to stop judging events based on how much it costs to trade there. What? Just because an event costs £700 to trade at does not mean that you are going to automatically walk away with 3 times that trade stand price. There is nothing wrong with setting yourself sales targets based on how much it costs to trade. However, I feel like now we tend to expect more off of events that costs more to trade at. Sometimes events overprice themselves, sometimes they underprice themselves. It really does vary. You know, sometimes your little village events that cost £10 to be there, you could end up being some of the best events to go to. I've kind of experienced it on both ends. I have paid £700 to go to a show and I walked away with about £800, which just wasn't worth it for a 3-day event. It just was not worth it. And I have been to a couple of others that have maybe cost £200-300 that maybe I haven't walked away with as much as I wanted to. And on the other side of that, I've been to £10 events where I've walked away with £400-500. So I think we need to get out of the mindset of thinking if I pay more to be there, I'm guaranteed to earn more and walk away with more, because that's just not how it works. And start looking at your customers and the events that they are going to. If they are going to go to these expensive events, then sure, you might do well. But if your customer is someone that's more likely to go to a little village pop-up, that is the obvious choice to go to. My 5th tip is probably slightly delusional. I think people might think I'm crazy for this one. I was looking into like the psychology of people when they're shopping at events, right? I don't know if I should be saying this. Okay, whatever. Right, I'm just going to tell you, this has worked for me. It might not work for you. So this typically works for a very specific type of event. I will use this trick when I am in a shopping centre or I am on a high street or somewhere where you've got a lot of walk-through foot traffic that aren't necessarily going to your event, rather than a ticketed event. So I would not do this if I was in my own gazebo at a ticketed event. I wouldn't do this. I lay out my items very precisely. The majority of businesses should have a lower ticket item, which is a cheaper item that draws people in for impulse buying. My cheapest item is a tug toy, which is £3. My most expensive item would be a larger collar that may be £16-17. So we have quite a large variation. What I do is I take my setup and I look at where people are going to be walking past, which directions they're coming from, what they're seeing first, and what is going to draw them in. You'll see here that I've got an L-shape table. Potential customers can be walking down either side of my table. On one side, they're going to see a lot more because they've got the longer L shape, and on the other side, they're not going to see that much. So on the side where they're not going to see that much, if they were walking towards the camera, I've put my bandanas. Why? because they're bright, they're colourful, they make people automatically look and go, oh, what is that? And they're about £5–6, so they're not crazy expensive. Directly next to them, I've got the leads and the collars, which tend to be more expensive. A lead is £11, a collar can range from £14 to £16, £17. If you're seeing my booth from this side, you're going, oh my gosh, a collar and a lead would set me back £25, but that bandana looks all right, it's only a £5. With that kind of same effect, I've done that so that no matter which way you're walking at my table or past my table, you see something that is of higher value and something that is of lower value. You can't really see it in the picture, but in the other corner, you can see I've got some buckets with some large bones in. They cost £9–10, and just next to them I have a bucket of tug toys which costs £3. Next to these large premium bones I have my pick and mix, which is 5 for £5. I'm almost putting my lower value items and sandwiching in my premium products with them, if that makes sense. This could be complete and utter nonsense, but I have found that it does work at these sorts of events. If an event is ticketed, I won't do it, because if someone's willing to pay £25 for a ticket into an event, you probably don't need to pull this trick too much. And it kind of works the same way, because if the foot traffic that is going past your table aren't necessarily, I don't want to say not bothered about price, but maybe have a little bit more flexibility when it comes to what they're spending, they probably won't notice it. But people who are maybe watching their disposable income or just trying to monitor it a little bit more might see something. They'll look at your premium price scale, that's quite expensive. Oh, I tell you what, I'll just get my dog a tug toy instead. That's a nice little treat. Therefore, you kind of get that dopamine hit without necessarily spending the money if you do not have it. It works as well, because if someone is going to spend, let's say £10 on a bone, then they look and they go, oh, a tug toy is only £3, I might as well get them together. That sort of thing. It works great for bundling, and it works great for people who have lower disposable income. They can still buy from you, they can still get that same dopamine hit if it's something for them, or they can still treat their dogs, for example, for my business. And that might be a completely insane way of looking at it, but I've just found that every time I've done it that way, it's worked, and I have tested it where I've then not done it that way, and I've not had as good of a sales day. So that is all of my tips for today. Let me know if you learned anything from this video, or if there's any that you don't agree with. I know that craft markets and the idea of having a handmade business at the minute causes a lot of debates online, you know. Unfortunately, we are just in an ever-changing landscape when it comes to wages and the cost of living, and it's going the wrong way at the minute. Everything's getting more expensive, and it is harder to be a handmade business. A few years ago, you would have been able to be a handmade business and that would sell itself, but now that just isn't the case. So hopefully these tips will help you at your next event, and stop going to craft markets and start going to events that your customers are going to. Thank you so much if you've made it up until this point. Make sure you subscribe and follow along on this little journey. Usually I vlog the chaotics of running a business. I'm trying to grow my online presence more, because events and markets are what fund my business at the minute, and I would like to grow it more online. So if you want to come along and see how we do it, and if we do it, then please subscribe, and I will see you next time. I still don't know how to end these, so goodbye.